I'll admit, I've been dreading about this game's release for a while. I'm getting tired of bland, gritty reboots on well-known established franchises. The thing with games getting the gritty treatment is that it misses the point of why the already established games work, and it also results in an aimless, directionless story that doesn't know what to do with itself, other than that just wants to be dark and gritty because, well, apparently that's the only way a story can be realistic or serious. This is why I was worried about the new Tomb Raider game. Now, I'm not saying that the Tomb Raider games have been nothing but masterpieces, it's just there's a reason why these games have been working. Sure, you can point out that the games were getting silly and over the top, but that was kind of the point. Lara Croft is an action heroine who serves as a vessel to explore the strange, exciting world the games have set out for us. With this reboot, however, it seemed like they were going into a direction that takes out the dungeon exploring with monsters and fun action-packed scenarios in favor of blander, standard shootouts with nothing all that special about it. Thankfully, that is not what happened. They still managed to make a fun, action-packed game that deals with exploring and mystery. So, at its heart, it still feels like a Tomb Raider game. Unfortunately, the whole gritty angle does get downplayed by how fun the game is trying to be, and the story doesn't quite work either. But the end result is an ambitious title that actually tries to be something and it still manages to be an interesting, worthwhile experience even with a lot of flaws the game has. The new Tomb Raider takes a lot from the Uncharted games, going for the big action movie feel with lots of explosions and barely survivable situations. There's also cover-based shooting you'll be doing as well. Okay, this is usually the part where I gripe and complain about how boring cover-based shooting is getting and how they need to try other interesting ways to implement combat. But here, this game probably has some of the most engaging shootouts I've seen in a while. It's because of how this game uses its cover mechanic in a way that actually feels natural. While other games will have you stick to cover and make it difficult to break away from it, Lara is always in this sort of crouching position during the combat, and when you have her move near cover, she'll automatically use it while also being able to freely move out of it when you need her to. There is also a lot of exploring to do that involves puzzle solving. Most of the puzzles are pretty straightforward as they involve jumping over to a certain spot, burning this one thing, moving this platform position. Yeah, it can be a little underwhelming, but they also serve as a nice break from the more exciting moments in this game. Because of the gameplay, the game manages to stay engaging all the way through. It can get over the top and silly sometimes. Actually, it can get that way a lot of times, but the mechanics work well and it can be frequently exciting. At no point was the game boring or confusing. It's fun going through some of the scripted events and trying to survive them, and the combat is free-flowing and intense. Not only can Lara move freely from cover to cover, but she can use her climbing axe for the occasional times when a bad guy is close enough for you to hit him. And damn, can Lara get really mean with her axe. But then there's the story, which is the part that doesn't make this game work completely. With the whole gritty reboot angle they are taking, this game serves as an origin story for Lara Croft. But the game fails at building up Lara as a character, and it feels like nobody seemed to know how to tackle the game's grittiness. The game begins right when the explorers get shipwrecked onto an island and Lara Croft gets separated from the crew. After a heavy over-the-top scripted event Lara has to survive, Lara has to find the rest of her crew and then they have to find a way to get off the island. Only the island is filled with bad guys who are a part of a religious cult who have sacrificing rituals. And while that's going on, there is also a lot more to this island than meets the eye. It's a sort of cross between Lost and King Kong if either of them didn't have any interesting characters. The reason why the dark and edgy angle they are trying to make with this game doesn't work is because they're trying to balance a more grounded, realistic experience while also giving us the crazy, explosive, near-death experiences that Lara has to go through on a constant rate, and some bloody over-the-top combat battles. To top it all off, Lara also gets brutally knocked around a lot in the first half of the game that actually gets really uncomfortable after a while. The first part of the game already had my suspension of disbelief out the window as Lara has to crawl her way out of a collapsing cave which she barely survives. Other times have Lara escaping from explosions and collapsing buildings, and these scenes are so drawn out to the point where they just become silly. What's weird though is that as the story progresses, the scripted events are less crazy and less explosive and not drawn out as badly. Regardless of how over the top the game kept on getting and how we have to sit through scenes of Lara acting vulnerable, it could have still worked if Lara was a fully realized character. And for the most part she is. Kind of. Sort of. Almost. Not really. Okay, this is where the game got really frustrating for me. Really big things that should have been important to the story are just skimmed over. Most of the characters are just there to drive the plot along, and even Lara's character gets pretty murky. There are a couple of parts where it flashes back to scenes during the travel on the boat, but its only purpose is for exposition of how they ended up on the island. It turns out that Laura is this eager explorer who thinks she's onto something big, so she leads the crew onto this island only to find out how messed up the island is. Because she feels like she's the reason everybody's in this mess, she takes it upon herself to set things right. Okay, that's fair so far, but there's a lot more to this trip and about Laura's life that the game never bothers to show us, but they sure like to reference those things a lot. For instance, apparently Laura's father was a big part of her life, and it's implied that he was more adventurous than her. But the game never goes past that, even though the story kept on acting like it was important enough that we really needed to know more about it. An even bigger problem is how the relationships between Laura and the rest of the crew is basically non-existent. This could have been fixed if they didn't decide to start the game where Laura gets separated from the group. Even just a couple of minutes on the boat showing us what the characters are like and why we should care about them would have been enough to keep the story going. Unfortunately, they break the show don't tell rule, and they don't even bother to tell us until it's way too late into the game. It wasn't until a character died until it's explained who they were and why they were important. One character dies and it's explained that he was supposedly the tough guy and nobody could believe that he was taken down so easily. Another part involves someone who is really close to Lara, but we don't know that until after this person dies. The characters who don't die never get characterized until halfway through the game, and even then, none of the characters really have any depth to them. There are journals of these characters you can find throughout the island, but making vital elements to a story optional is not good storytelling. It undermines how we are actually supposed to care about these people. Finally, when Laura's character arc comes into full circle, it just sort of happens. She starts off as this weak, vulnerable character who can only desperately cling on to her life, but she has to grow stronger in order to save everyone on the island. There will be times when she acts more confident in situations, particularly when she's killing bad guys and she starts having no problem actually killing them, but she doesn't really evolve as a character until the very last minute of the game where she decides that she wants to go out adventuring some more. There's no build up to this, and the way the story sets everything up, it felt like this was something she wouldn't want to do ever again. Tomb Raider is still a good game. Maybe it doesn't get all its story beats right, but the gameplay does make up for quite a bit. And how this game was approached does show a lot of ambition. And in this age where it feels like nothing but ambitionless crap comes out, that alone makes this game worth playing. I just hope there will be a point when people figure out that the story doesn't have to be dark or gritty or overly serious in order to bring an enriching experience with good characters and an enthralling story. Okay, so who's the next victim that's getting the gritty approach? Wait, what? Seriously?